Think about the most successful serial entrepreneur you know.
Oh, yeah. We all know the type.
Right. The kind of person who builds this massive disruptive company, takes it public, and then completely out of nowhere just steps down.
Just to go start a tiny, chaotic new venture all over again from scratch.
Exactly. And the cultural narrative tells us they do this because they just have this like insatiable, magical superpower called passion for business.
Right, the whole fire in the belly thing.
Yeah, but what if that is entirely wrong? What if the reason they keep starting over is actually because they get profoundly, almost unbearably bored the literal minute a company becomes stable?
That is such a fascinating question.
Today, we are tearing down the mythology of the hustle culture founder. We're going to look at the actual neurological and psychological machinery of entrepreneurial passion.
And we're doing that by looking at a really landmark piece of research. This is a 2009 academic paper from the Academy of Management Review. It's called The Nature and Experience of Entrepreneurial Passion.
And it's such a great read because, for decades, economists and business theorists basically just use the word passion as a scientific shrug.
Yeah, like a catch-all excuse for crazy behavior.
Right. Going all the way back to people like Joseph Schumpeter in the 50s, theorists would observe founders taking wild, irrational risks, working brutal hours, ignoring glaring warning signs.
Stuff that makes zero logical economic sense.
Exactly. And because it didn't make sense, they just waved their hands and called it passion.
You see that romanticized view everywhere, really. I mean, Anita Roddick, who founded The Body Shop, famously said you have to believe in something with such passion that it becomes reality.
Michael Dell called it the fire that drives your life's work.
Right. We treat it like this permanent personality trait. Like you either have the fire in your belly or you're just destined for a middle management mediocrity.
Well, our goal in this deep dive is to cut through all that fluff. We really want to decode what that fire actually is, how it hijacks your brain to coordinate your behavior, and why, if you don't understand the specific type of passion you have, it will absolutely burn you out.
So the very first thing the researchers do here is dismantle the idea that passion is a permanent personality trait.
Right. It's not just something you're born with.
No. They argue that entrepreneurial passion is a consciously accessible, intense, positive feeling. But here's the mechanism that changes everything.
Okay, lay it on us.
That feeling is only experienced by engaging in activities associated with roles that are deeply meaningful to your self-identity. It is an identity-based trigger.
Right, so let's slow down and look at that, because the distinction between like a personality trait and an identity-based trigger, that feels massive.
It is huge.
Because if I find a $20 bill on the sidewalk, I feel a sudden burst of happiness.
Yeah.
But that's just a fleeting good mood, right? An episodic emotion.
Exactly. It happens to you, but it doesn't say anything about who you are.
Right. That is the crucial difference.
Yeah. Episodic emotions are just reactions to external stimuli. You get a good cup of coffee, you feel happy. But passion is tied to what psychologists call the active self.
The active self.
Yeah. It involves an intense longing for objects or activities that validate your core identity. The paper relies heavily on affect control theory to explain this.
So affect control theory, let's break that framework down a bit. Is it basically like a psychological feedback loop?
Well, think of it as a neurological validation system.
Okay.
We all have a salient identity, a core narrative, how we see ourselves. When you engage in a behavior that aligns with and reinforces that identity, your brain registers a match.
Like it clicks into place.
Right. It essentially tags those specific activities with intense positive emotions. This bolsters your motivational resources.
Oh, wow.
So over time, your brain learns that doing this specific task makes you feel like your truest, most authentic self. The intense, enduring, positive feeling that results from that alignment, that is what we call passion.
Okay, I want to try a metaphor here to make sure I'm grasping the mechanism.
Go for it.
So an episodic emotion is like a thermostat turning on the air conditioning because someone opened a window and let a hot breeze in. It's just reacting to an external environment.
Sure, yeah.
But affect control theory is more like having a highly tuned biological engine. When you feed it the exact specific octane of fuel it was built to burn, it roars to life and runs at peak efficiency.
Oh, I love that.
So the passion isn't the car. The passion is the chemical reaction of the right fuel hitting the right engine.
That is a perfect analogy because it totally sets up the next major question the researchers tackle.
Which is?
If passion requires the right fuel hitting the right engine, what are the actual engines?
Ah, right. What are these entrepreneurial identities? Because the cultural myth is, the solitary genius in a turtleneck who just loves every single aspect of building a business.
Which we all know is a total myth.
Right. But we still somehow expect founders to be amazing at inventing the product, raising the capital, and then managing the HR department 10 years later.
And the research shatters that expectation entirely. They categorize the entrepreneurial identity into 3 distinct roles.
Okay, what are they?
Well, the point is you do not just have a generalized passion for business. You have passion for activities that validate one of these 3 specific identities. And the first is the inventor.
So this is the person whose core self is tied up in tinkering, disrupting, finding new solutions.
Exactly. The paper points to Stefan Wozniak as the classic inventor archetype.
Oh, sure. Apple?
Right. Wozniak's identity wasn't about corporate structuring or scaling a global supply chain.
No, not at all.
His core self was validated by identifying a technological gap and building the machine to fill it.
So when he was soldering circuit boards and creating something novel, his brain was just flooding with that intense positive effect.
That was his fuel.
But, simply inventing a circuit board in a garage doesn't automatically spawn Apple Computer. Eventually, the prototype is done.
Right.
So who actually turns the invention into a legal, funded entity?
That requires the second identity, which is the founder. The founder's core identity is validated by assembling resources.
Assembling resources.
Yeah, they love the puzzle of pulling together financial capital, human capital, and social capital to really breathe life into a firm.
Do they have a good example for that one?
Yeah, the researchers use Wayne Huizenga as their example.
Oh, Huizenga is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Because he built Blockbuster Video, and he built Waste Management.
Exactly.
He didn't invent the VHS tape, and he certainly didn't invent garbage.
Right. He didn't need to. His passion wasn't in the invention, it was in the assembly.
Wow, yeah.
A founder gets their intense positive feeling from pitching to venture capitalists, convincing top talent to take a huge risk on a startup, legally forming the entity.
That high-stakes creation phase.
Exactly. That is what validates their active self.
Which brings us to the inevitable reality of business, right? The ink dries on the incorporation papers. The initial funding round is closed. The company exists.
It's alive.
Right. Now, somebody has to actually run the thing, optimize the margins, and capture market share.
And that introduces the third identity, the developer.
Okay.
The developer is passionate about nurturing, growing, and expanding a venture once it exists.
So they thrive on the complexities of scaling.
Totally. The archetype here is Ray Kroc.
Oh, McDonald's.
Right. He didn't invent the McDonald's hamburger, and he wasn't even the original founder of the restaurant.
Right, the McDonald brothers were.
Exactly. But his identity was validated by standardization, franchising, taking a small operation and turning it into a global empire.
Okay, I want to challenge something here, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've seen founders who just white-knuckle their way through scaling a company for years. They clearly hate managing the massive organization, but they force themselves to do it because they feel a sense of obligation to the thing they started.
Yeah, we see that all the time.
Does their passion just eventually die, or are they doing something fundamentally wrong?
They are very likely operating outside their dominant identity. The research explicitly states that these 3 identities, the inventor, founder, developer, are organized in a hierarchy within each of us.
A hierarchy.
Yeah. For most people, one role is deeply dominant. This is actually the scientific explanation for the serial entrepreneur we talked about at the start.
Oh, right.
Yeah, a dominant founder gets massive positive affect from raising the Series A and making the first 10 hires. But once the company stabilizes and requires a developer to manage 1,000 employees,
The founder's brain just stops getting that identity validation.
exactly, the passion vanishes. It's not that they lost their drive, it's that the daily activities no longer match their identity hierarchy.
So they sell the company to a developer and go start over.
Bingo.
That reframes so much of the guilt people feel in their careers.
It really does.
If you are listening to this right now and you feel entirely burnt out or disconnected from your work, it doesn't mean you are lazy. It doesn't mean your industry is broken.
Yeah.
It might just mean your daily calendar is demanding developer activities from a brain that is hardwired for an inventor identity.
Absolutely. And understanding your dominant identity is really only the first piece of the puzzle here.
Right, because we need to know what that identity actually does.
Exactly. The researchers then transition to the mechanics of how this internal feeling actually drives real-world success.
How it translates into action.
Right. They apply a framework called self-regulation theory to map out how passion coordinates your brain and your body.
Okay, so self-regulation theory basically refers to how we steer our own thoughts and behaviors to achieve a goal.
Yes, exactly.
Is the difference between wanting to build a company and actually sitting down at your desk to do the hard work.
Yeah. Passion doesn't just make you feel warm and fuzzy. It actively coordinates your cognitions, which is how you process information and your behaviors to overcome massive hurdles.
So it's actively doing work behind the scenes.
Right. And the fascinating part is that passion triggers 3 distinct behaviors, depending on which of the 3 identities is currently in the driver's seat.
Let's map those out. So if I am an inventor and I am highly passionate, what specific behavior does that trigger in my brain?
For the inventor, passion triggers creative problem solving.
Okay, that makes sense.
But this isn't just basic brainstorming, it's the active generation of truly novel and useful ideas. When your identity is on the line, passion broadens your attention.
Broadens it how?
You stop looking at the obvious solutions and you start finding unusual, peripheral associations that other people just miss completely.
Oh, I see. And what about the founder? Because they aren't trying to invent a new product. They're trying to get someone to write them a check.
Right. So for the founder, passion triggers persistence.
Persistence.
Yeah, which they define as the continuation of effort despite failures, impediments, or active threats.
So imagine a founder facing their 50th rejection from an angel investor.
Exactly. For a normal person, that level of rejection is psychologically devastating.
Totally. You just quit.
Right. But for a passionate founder, giving up would be a direct threat to their core self-identity. So the passion physically and mentally forces them to endure the pain and just keep pitching.
Wow. Okay, so that leaves the developer. They already have the product, they have the funding, but they are dealing with, supply chain collapses, HR crises, market volatility.
A lot of chaos.
Right. So what behavior does passion trigger for them?
Absorption.
Absorption.
Yeah, this is the state of being completely immersed in a flow state to the point where you ignore passing time and external distractions.
Like deep work.
Exactly. The developer needs to navigate the chaos of a growing market. Passion allows them to become so deeply engrossed in the strategic growth of the firm that they aren't derailed by the daily noise. They just lock in.
So earlier we used the metaphor of passion being the right fuel for the engine.
Yeah.
But it's more than just fuel, isn't it? It's the entire navigation system.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, if you are an inventor, the passion routes you toward creative associations. If you are a founder, it reroutes you through a brick wall of rejection using pure grit.
Yes.
It essentially customizes your behavioral output based on the identity you're trying to validate.
That is a brilliant synthesis. And it's actually heavily supported by another psychological framework the paper brings in called the broaden and build theory.
Broaden and build.
Yeah, the intense positive emotions generated by passion actually activate an expanded sense of your own capabilities.
Wait, you actually feel more capable.
Literally. Because you feel this surge of identity-validating energy, you perceive yourself as more capable.
That's incredible.
It is. This allows entrepreneurs to set highly challenging goals and intrinsically commit to them. You don't just work harder, your brain actually expands its repertoire of possible actions.
Okay, so we've established that passion gives us the customized navigation. It expands our capabilities and makes us creative, persistent, and absorbed.
It does.
It sounds like an absolute superpower. But anytime we talk about founders, the conversation inevitably turns to burnout, rigid thinking, and spectacular failures.
Oh, yes.
So is more passion always better? Or is there a toxic tipping point?
There is absolutely a tipping point, and this is where the research enters the danger zone.
The danger zone.
Yeah. The researchers discovered what they call the inverted U effect, specifically regarding the inventor's creative problem solving.
An inverted U, meaning the benefits go up as passion increases, hit a peak, and then violently crash back down if the passion gets too high.
That is exactly the shape of it. Up to a certain threshold, passion helps you find those unusual associations we talked about. You are fluid, creative, open-minded.
Right.
But if the passion becomes too intense, it becomes severely detrimental to creativity.
Really?
Yeah, the entrepreneur becomes incredibly rigid. They fall so deeply in love with their initial idea that they become terrified of exploring alternatives.
But why does the brain do that? If the passion is supposed to make you creative, why does maxing it out suddenly make you closed-minded?
Because of fear.
Fear.
Yeah, the intense positive feeling of passion is intoxicating. If an inventor comes up with a prototype that gives them a massive surge of identity validation, pivoting away from that prototype feels like a literal threat.
Oh, I see.
They subconsciously fear that exploring alternatives might dilute the intense positive experience they are currently enjoying. They basically become addicted to the feeling of their first idea.
So they are prioritizing the emotional high of their identity validation over the actual viability of the business model.
Yes. And this leads the researchers to distinguish between harmonious passion and obsessive passion.
Harmonious versus obsessive.
Right. Harmonious passion means you can easily transition between your entrepreneurial identity and the other roles in your life. Being a parent, a friend, a hobbyist.
You have balance.
Exactly. But obsessive passion occurs when one specific entrepreneurial role crowds out everything else. The venture leaves no space for any other identity. The company just becomes the entirety of the self.
Wow. I can see how that destroys persistence, too.
Oh, completely.
Because if the company is your entire identity, then a failure isn't just a business setback, it's the death of your ego.
Exactly. It's devastating.
But how does this obsessive passion affect the developer? The person whose superpower is absorption and managing growth.
Okay, the paper highlights a wild, counterintuitive paradox here regarding something called goal striving.
Goal striving.
Goal striving involves heavy planning, monitoring your progress, and constantly adjusting your plans based on tactical feedback.
Which sounds like standard, responsible business management.
Yeah.
Checking your dashboards, reviewing monthly churn rates, adjusting the budget.
It is standard management, but the paper notes that highly passionate entrepreneurs sometimes score lower on goal striving.
Wait, lower? Why?
Because when you are operating in a state of high passion, you rely on what psychologists call heuristic processing.
Okay, meaning what?
It means you are using mental shortcuts, gut feelings, and top-down macro visions. You feel so deeply aligned with your grand strategy that you start ignoring the bottom-up negative tactical feedback.
You just bulldoze through the warning signs because the top-down vision feels so undeniably right to your active self.
Yes. And here is the real paradox. If you take an obsessively passionate developer and force them to do too much goal striving.
Like force them to look at the metrics.
Right. If you force them to micromanage every single daily metric and constantly monitor tactical deviations, it can actually destroy their state of absorption.
Wait, really? Why would looking at the data destroy their flow state?
Because the brain only has so much attentional capacity.
Okay.
The absorption that makes a developer great requires a macro-level flow experience. It's an effortlessness in goal-directed action at a high strategic level.
Like they're orchestrating a symphony.
Exactly. If you force their brain to constantly pivot down to micromanagement and tactical course correction, you interrupt that high-level flow.
You break their concentration.
You pull them out of the very psychological state that provides their positive affect. The passion coordinates the big picture, but if you micromanage it too heavily, you extinguish the fire entirely.
So the very tools we use to manage a business, dashboards, metrics, constant pivots, they can actively kill the psychological absorption that allows a developer to scale the company in the first place.
It's crazy.
That is an incredibly delicate tightrope to walk.
It requires profound self-awareness. You have to regulate the passion so it doesn't become a blinding obsession, but you also have to protect your flow state from being suffocated by administrative micromanagement.
Let's synthesize all of this for the listener, because we have unpacked a massive amount of psychological machinery from this research today.
We really have.
The biggest paradigm shift here is that entrepreneurial passion is not a magical generalized aura that some lucky people are just born with.
Far from it. It is a highly specific, intense, consciously accessible feeling. And it only fires up when you engage in the specific activities that validate your core identity.
Right. Whether you are an inventor searching for the next disruption, a founder assembling the complex pieces of a new firm, Or a developer finding your flow state in the chaos of scaling an organization.
Exactly.
When you find that exact alignment between your identity and your daily actions, it acts as a customized navigation system. It drives creative problem solving, it fuels seemingly irrational persistence, and it allows for deep strategic absorption.
But, as we saw with the inverted U effect, it demands strict regulation.
Right.
You must ensure that your passion remains harmonious. If it becomes obsessive, it crowds out your entire life, it makes you incredibly rigid to new ideas, and it blinds you on necessary feedback.
Because you just become addicted to the emotional high of your own vision.
Exactly.
So the immediate takeaway for you, listening to this deep dive, is to conduct a ruthless audit of your own professional life. Look at where you spend your hours.
Yes, look closely.
Which of those three identities, inventor, founder, developer, actually gives you that core neurological validation?
Because you might be surprised.
Are you currently frustrated, exhausted, and feeling like you've lost your passion simply because you are trying to force yourself to be a developer, managing a sprawling team, when your brain is actually hardwired to be an inventor who just wants to build the next product?
It is all about finding harmony between the identity you hold and the environment you create for yourself. You cannot force a fire to burn without the right fuel.
Which brings us to a final, lingering thought based on the implications of this research. We started this deep dive by talking about how society treats passion like this mystical force that demands you hold on to your dream forever, no matter what.
Right, never give up.
We celebrate the founders who stay with their company from the garage all the way to the ringing of the bell on Wall Street. But if our identities dictate our passion, and our ventures inevitably grow and mutate over time into massive bureaucracies,
Which they always do.
is the ultimate test of a great entrepreneur really how long they can grit their teeth and hold on?
That's a great question.
Or is the ultimate test of greatness actually their self-awareness, their willingness to walk away from their own creation, to hand it over to someone else, the very moment it requires an identity they simply do not possess?
Wow.
Think about it. The fire isn't just a superpower. It's a specific chemical reaction for a specific type of engine. Make sure you know exactly what kind of machine you are driving.